I have got two of the most incredible human beings with me tonight. And I've had a number of relationships in my life, and, there's some relationships that are kind of in the spirit of different things in your life. Like I've got kite surfing buddies, and I've got buddies that I like to go exercise with. And then I have like people that I just like to do everything with. And there's a deep spiritual connection. And we share this love of just being curious about the purpose of life and the honest of life and this continued spiritual journey and growth. And, Dr. Michael Ryce here on the far left, Harry the healer. Michael I've worked with for many, many years, and he's just been...
Yeah, I'm not even sure how many years it is. 35? I don't know.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. It's like something like that. Yeah. That's a long time. Yeah. And it was some still point breathing and some forgiveness work, which we'll probably be touching on that a bit. And this was a real impromptu setting that I both of you guys were in town, and I was like, let's get together and let's talk about something that's really been coming up in all of our lives, which is the connection that the mind and the spirit has with the body, right? The physical to our mental, our intention. So we're going to be kind of diving into that. We've got some questions that we got from the audience, and we're going to be answering these questions and then just kind of getting some perspectives, because each one of us really comes from a very unique, I think, perspective. Michael Ryce's history with being an ordained deacon at one point and then studying the original oldest version of the Bible in Aramaic and the forgiveness process. And Harry Paul, your unique journey, my gosh, I mean, the stories. but your work with psychedelic medicines and you are just one of the most sought after shamans in the world right now, and you hold these amazing, beautiful ceremonies. And so your insight into this is hugely valuable.
Thank you.
I kind of have a bit of more of a science-y type of view, so I think it's going to be a fun conversation.
Yeah.
So with that said, let's get started, and you can go ahead and...
Okay.
I have a little piece to add here.
Okay.
I read it to him earlier. I haven't read this to you. Two physicists, a cell biologist, a naturopath, and a theologian walk into a bar and decide no such thing exists. Where do you go from there?
Nowhere.
And everywhere.
Everywhere. So we're going to cover all aspects.
Yes.
It's physical, mental, emotional,
spiritual,
physics.
Yeah. So we'll take a first question. How can the principles of gratitude and compassion be integrated into daily life, fostering a sense of abundance and interconnectedness?
Beautiful question. Michael, would you like to?
Well, my take is gratitude. There's a lot of conversation about gratitude these days. And gratitude tends, I think, to be centered on the individual and the individual getting what they want. It's like, oh, I'm really grateful I got that. But I think there's a whole level above it, and that's appreciation. And when we open to appreciation, it just opens, it moves beyond the personal to a whole different world. And like the fact that we get to live a human life is just...
It's true.
And you look at the history of humanity and what humanity's gone through for us to be able to get here and sit here like this and just to know that we're safe and we're, bombs not going to drop through the ceiling. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So
there's
a lot of appreciation.
Saber-toothed tiger coming for us.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting point that you're making with regards to, like, we have things that we want, right? And so being grateful for what we get, and it's like this aspect of just being okay with the isness of life. I know that, I don't know what...
Do we want what we
religion
have?
Says that, but yeah.
Do we want what we have?
The Rolling Stones wrote a song about it, right?
Well, gratitude really changes our life, because gratitude is the greatest state of receivership. In this moment, it opens us up to really allow the synchronicities in life, because we enter into a quantum field. Mm-hmm. And then whatever we were seeking is seeking us. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing missing. Mm-hmm. So it's acting as if we already have it, because it's connecting the mind and the feeling of it. And then we become a powerful, powerful magnet to just attract people, places, things to us.
Yeah, there's this aspect of manifesting or intending things mm-hmm. by being grateful for already receiving it and going into the place of just knowing that you have it, right? Yeah. I know a number of people have written and spoke about this. Rhonda mm-hmm. Byrne, a friend in common, talks about that in The Secret, right? Yeah. But then there's this aspect of being grateful for just what is. Yeah. Yeah. And at the most basic level, just grateful that you got a ticket to the party. You're here. Yeah. You have a life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Well, it's Michael, like you were saying, it's like being clear about what you want, right? Mm-hmm. Because 97% of people go through life never knowing what they want. 1% know what they want, but they don't know how to manifest it. 1% know what they want, they know how to manifest it, but they don't know how to enjoy it. So let's be that 1%. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. That know what we want, know how to manifest it, and know how to enjoy it. That's the key, because otherwise, what are we doing here? If life isn't fun, it isn't life.
Yeah. You brought up a point too that I think is worthy of kind of exploring a little bit, is feeling worthy of mm-hmm. receiving, right? Yes. And so when you go into that state mm-hmm. of gratitude, often I see when I'm working with patients that there's a contracture, right? Where people are they come in, they're givers, especially these mothers, right? Right. They're used to giving and giving and giving. Yeah. And they never really are comfortable like fully going into the receiving mode and just mm-hmm. being grateful for receiving. Yeah. And you had taught me, I think it was like a year or so ago, it's like, in order for you to receive, mm-hmm. right, you have to open yourself up. Yeah. And if you're not feeling worthy of that, right, mm-hmm. So many people have a difficult time, I believe, receiving. Yeah. And it was interesting how at first blush, I'm like, it's like I see that and it's over there. And then I started to realize like that was a lot of what was happening inside of me as well. And I started to become more open to receiving, and it really made some beautiful shifts in my life.
Yeah. Well, the conversation is not about deserving, because we don't have to do anything to deserve anything. And our self-esteem, we're going to make every decision in our life from a place of self-esteem. So if we have a healthy self-esteem, we're able to receive. And mothers, mothers are considered nurturers, right? Because they nurture husband, kids, And nurturing, we think of it as a feminine trait. It's actually not. It's a masculine trait. It takes a lot of doing, right? Mm-hmm. Lots of action. So then the question, which you are really great at, Michael, is like, how do we do without doing? Yeah. How do we do without doing? But unless we are able to receive, if we can't receive, the place that we give from is a shallower place. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that's what I said to you.
That was the,
Yeah.
And sadly, a lot of people have some idea of what they want, and they have no idea of the power of their language, and their whole conversation is about what they don't want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't want a relationship like that again. I don't want that kid to do that. Oh, don't touch that. And they're languaging. And when you think of it in terms of quantum physics, mm-hmm. entering the quantum field, mm-hmm. what we focus on energetically is what we get. And the word not or don't doesn't mean anything in that conversation. Right. All you have to do is focus on whether it's the good, the bad, or the ugly. If you focus on it, you just set it in motion. Mm-hmm. You literally add an energy to it. The observer effect, you literally add an energy. So when I say, I don't want anybody ever attack me again, that puts out a literal, measurable high energy wave that says, hey, is there anybody in Dodge that knows how to attack me? Just exactly like this. And
that's what happens.
Person's going to show off.
Something that's really hitting me right now is you and I watched a movie on Temple.
Yes, Temple Grandin. That was awesome.
Temple Grandin, good movie to watch, but it's an autistic woman who wound up doing all kinds of amazing things. And her superpower was she could look at something and then it was just like photograph. Mm-hmm. She could look at a page in a book, and it's like she could just pick it up, pull it up in her mind, and she could read it. But it was images. And I'm thinking about this aspect of the unconscious and subconscious where the images, you know, it's not, you're going to have an image, what I don't want, and it's there. Mm-hmm. Right. But the don't isn't there. You just see the image.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's where forgiveness comes in. And the culture teaches that forgiveness is about how I'm going to let you off the hook for what's happening inside of me, which has nothing whatsoever to do with forgiveness. That's the world of pardoning. It's a Greek idea. Oh, I'll let you off the hook. Okay, so you did something. But if what you did resonated something painful in me, one of those images in me, or an old trauma, maybe even generational trauma, when I recognize that that's in me, I need to engage in the actual act of forgiveness, which is the act of removal of what never belonged in me in the first place. Because as long as it's in there, it creates an attractive field that's going to produce results. Mm-hmm. You know, probably the greatest atrocity done to us as human beings down through the ages, and of course we bought into it, is that we are by nature creators. Each of us are creators. And
yes,
of course everybody loves that idea, right? When the creation's going well.
Yeah.
But when it's not going so well, don't we know whose name it is, who the problem is? Mm-hmm. And it's always there.
Very well.
And until we give that one up and start to move into responsibility, if I thought it, I set it in motion. That's the prime mover. You know, Max Planck talks about how, you know, here's a guy who won the Nobel Prize in physics for sourcing the whole idea of the quantum field. And he says, I've never seen matter. He says, to me, there is no matter. It doesn't exist. But there's a mind that organizes atoms, electrons, protons, neutrons into this thing we call matter. Mm-hmm. And, you know, my comment on Planck's take there is, yeah, that's our creatorship. Mm-hmm. But we're doing this with our minds. That's what organizes this world we call matter.
It goes back to a CIA study, right, Michael?
Exactly, yes.
Yes, the mind doesn't record, it creates.
Yes.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Once you shift your perception of that, it's so powerful in one's life.
Everything changes.
That really segues nicely into a question that the audience had for you.
Yes.
Harry Paul. And it relates to psychedelic medicine, and how does the default mode network and psychedelic medicine relate to making changes with mind-body connection?
How does the default network?
This is a viewer that obviously has been reading some books on psychedelic medicine. Yes. But the default mode network is where our sense of identity is stored. Yeah.
Well, we live in a vibrational universe. So once we are able to shift that perception or become so conscious and so aware of our programs and our habits and the things that serve us and that don't serve us. So you can become very aware in the moment. I call it following our midline. So it's being anchored in the now, in the moment, in the present. Mm-hmm. And then you can notice when the mind takes you away to a program. This happens all the time that I get to witness. And the mind will go, oh, I'm frustrated. I don't like that, you know? And it's so fast to go there because we have those neural pathways that we're used to. Just there's a rut in our brain that are used to going down that pathway. Yeah. Now, the moment that we notice it and we take a deep breath, and we can think of putting our nostrils right here and really taking a deep breath and breathing in and letting go so that we align back in our divine mind. Yes, because we have a divine mind, we have an insane mind. So when we notice it and we bring it back, we breathe and we go vertical, yes, we can become aware. So we're in our flow state. So that default network, you can notice it. And that's really all we get to do here in this existence on planet Earth is become aware and breathe and stay in the moment. We're human beings, we're not human doings. So we get to just be. But now it takes an internal muscularity to really be. Because you get to notice that mind. The mind is so busy, it's insidious, it's cunning, it's tireless, has attack thoughts, gains evidence. And it's not here just to inconvenience us, it wants us to suffer. So that's the great gauge. If we're suffering, our insane mind is engaged. Because we didn't come here to suffer, did we, Michael?
No, I don't think we came here to suffer. but that's a message that's given to a lot of people. And I don't think the mind's responsible for that message. I think that's just one that's been handed to it. And once it gets in the loop, I oftentimes refer to TSRs in a computer world, terminate and stay resident. Program shuts down, but it's there back there in an instant. And again, if you apply forgiveness to that program, hostility, fear, rage, guilt, grief, whatever, which when it's resident in tissue is literally a chemical disease. When I can access that and remove it from my structure, I not only get rid of the TSR, I not only get rid of the reaction. You look at that word react. How did you react? How did you redo the act that was done on a previous occasion? When you free yourself of that, you're also freeing your cellular structure of that energy, of that actual pattern. And they call that healing, removing diseases. The culture calls treatment healing, as opposed to really recognizing what this energy system is that we have and the broad spectrum of things, one, that were given to us genetically, and two, that automatically play out over and over and over. Let's say, I'm ready to be done with that. Then the option is to forgive it, literally, in the ancient Aramaic sense. Get rid of it, remove it.
It's like an app running in our human operating system.
TSR.
We disengage.
Stay resident. Shuts down, but it's ready to pop back in an instant.
Beautiful. Well, I think that ties into our next question.
Okay.
Very well, which is for Dr. Ryce. You developed a form of breath work called still point breathing. And could you please explain how you're able to create transformational changes in the mind-body connection through that technique?
Okay. So my work's a combination of many different disciplines. And when we go back into the ancient Aramaic language, I speak of that often because that's the source of most of the wisdom that I've found on the planet comes in through the Aramaic. And it's the root language of at least 5 of the world's major religions, though it's not a religious language. When I first ran into the Aramaic language with my background in physics, the first thing that clicked in my brain is this is a physics language. This is psychology. This is genetics. This is not theology. And when you realize that, so things like, let's say, in particular, that particular question, they said in that ancient teaching, the veil of the temple must be rent in twain, torn in two. Are we going to go tear a purple curtain in church? No, it wasn't about that. This is the temple, and the veil is the barrier literally between the subconscious and the unconscious mind. And my take is, and the unconscious, everybody knows about it today. It's interesting. They understood it fully. I mean, it was literally in the syntax of the Aramaic language. But in our modern world, until Freud rediscovered the unconscious, I mean, he got a Nobel Prize for that. It's been unknown. So people have been trying to translate those teachings without one of the most basic components, and that is an understanding of the unconscious. So the veil of the temple, as I see it, that they were talking about, is the barrier between the subconscious and the unconscious mind. And my take is we are not, as human beings, designed to have an unconscious mind. It's not normal. Let me reverse that. It's not natural. It's become normal. I mean, talk to psychologists today and they'll tell you that 80, 90, 95, 90, as much as 98% of our thinking is unconscious. And we're not designed to have one. We're not designed to be out of touch with what's running inside of us. So this barrier between the subconscious and the unconscious, my take is, what for me, I discovered was that barrier is built with the breath. You watch people when they're in trauma, the things they don't want to deal with, the things they want to relegate to the unconscious, what do? They shut down the breath, they stop breathing. So when the breath is properly restored, the veil starts to open. And all of the snakes and uglies and beauties that are there start to become available. But most people subventilate most of the time, most of their lives. They're just not breathing. Now, put that together and let's go all the way back to the origins of the Western scriptures in Aramaic. It doesn't say in Aramaic, in that creation story, that God sent out his spirit. What it says is the Creator sent out its breath. Literally. People talk about this thing called the Holy Spirit as though it's some kind of mystical, disembodied spirit being, something, well, who knows? It's the breath.
Yeah.
Literally. And when you go back to the Aramaic, that's it. So people hold their breath, they create a veil, they create a barrier, they create a part of themselves they're not acquainted with. I love how Carl Jung talks about it. He says, what we refuse to deal with, we meet in 1,000 disguises in our lives. Our minds dress up our unconscious dynamics in pictures of other people's bodies.
Right.
And we believe that the bodies we generate, the images we generate with our minds out of our own unconscious dynamics are actually out there when they're not, they're in here.
Yeah.
And so when I breathe, I can touch into those dynamics. And there's a point that comes, and I discovered this just doing my own breathwork practice. I'd been trained in a way that said if you stop breathing when you're doing breath work, then you're going unconscious. And, you know, it's kind of like that's when you get a jab in the ribs and you're told to breathe. And I didn't have a facilitator at that moment. And I found myself not breathing, but it wasn't holding my breath. My breath had gone to what I eventually came to call still point breathing. It had gone to a still point, which was a place that I've come to understand as a superconductor state. In Aramaic, the word Satan has nothing to do with the guy with the red suit, the tail, and the pitchfork. The word Satan means the resistor, one who misleads. So when I don't want to deal with things, I hold my breath, I go into resistance, and let's say, John, you say, Michael, I've seen you go through that before. Why don't you just take responsibility for that? So when you ask me to be responsible for it, what does the average person do? First of all, it's no, not me. No, this isn't mine. So now I'm in resistance, and I'm talking literal, physical resistance. And then I have a whole story about who? Somebody else. Most people by the age of 4 in this culture are members, very devout religious people, members of the one world universal religion of blame. It's all everybody else's fault. And that's Satan. Literally, most of the world lives in the Aramaic sense, trapped in Satan. Nothing to do with the guy with the red suit, but an internal process of resistance. And the still point is a place where that resistance lets go and one steps into a superconductor state. And in that state, mountains of old data, generational patterns can just be undone that fast.
Well, it seems to me that there's a very similar connection between, and to your credit, you also utilize breath work in a different way. So breath work, I think you appreciate the power of that as well.
Oh, for sure.
And what I'm kind of gathering is that there's some similarities with regards to the default mode network, right? We're going to throw that big word out.
Yeah.
But it's like, where is the default mode network? It's our ego, right? It's our thoughts. It's that monkey mind.
Non-being mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's being, there's who we are as human beings, and then there's the non-being mind.
But, the still point technique, which we're not going to get into, really does shut down that monkey mind, and it gets you to be able to drop into the unconscious. And boy, do psychedelic medicines do that in a way, right?
Oh yeah. It just, we live in a vibrational universe. So when we can notice whatever we resist or we're fearful of feeling, and we begin to breathe and we open up, because we're the faucet rather than the water. So when we just really open up, we can notice what's been down there, what we've been holding on in that default network.
Yeah.
And it starts to surface. Yeah. And then it gets to come up. And then as we evolve, we get to see what's there.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it comes up, and we have choices when it comes up, right? That monkey mind can kick back in, and we can get fear, hostility, different types of negative emotions. We can have positive emotions.
Act out.
And the other commonality that I see with both of your works is that it's about bathing this experience with love, with a sense of almost like comfort, like it's okay as it's coming up.
Compassion.
Where when you have that response, that negative response, this is not a response where healing can happen, because if you look at the nervous system, there's a sympathetic and a parasympathetic. And there's a need, and the very powerful activator of the parasympathetic nervous system with breath work. And so we meet these unconscious, which oftentimes are scary thoughts, which in my kind of the way that I look at a lot of mental, emotional afflictions that then lead to a lot of physical afflictions, there's a deep fear that I'm not enough and that I'm not loved.
Yes.
And below that is that annihilation, I no longer am, right? It's like, it's almost like a death, right? But it's ego death, because, you know, underneath it all, we are always, right? That awareness is going to continue on.
It's interesting. Job had a pretty cool insight. If you remember the story of Job, this is like, he's one of the wealthiest men around. He's got it all together. God approves of him. Everything is cool. And then his whole world falls apart. And early in the conversation, if you read that text, after things have fallen apart and they're trying to understand what happened, he says, that which I feared most has come upon me. That which I dreaded has happened. And he had a habit. If you go back and read that text, he had a habit. He was so perfect. He was impeccable. But he had this fear that his children weren't. And it was his habit to dwell on that and dwell on that. And he realized that that was his destroyer. And then you go through that whole book and oh man, there's so many conversations. His friends come and they're blaming this person, they're blaming that, they're blaming God. They just go crazy. And then Job comes back around after all that. I mean, it's a long book, and he comes back around. He had the insight, that which I feared most has come upon me, but in the confusion of life, which most people live in, not understanding the principles of healing, he gets lost in all these conversations. And finally, at the end, before everything gets restored, he says, I gave up those words. I gave up that thought. He forgave.
I view this as a very simple technique and very powerful, because it's leading people through, okay, what's the stories that we tell ourselves? You know, what's our belief system? Words are codes, the words that we think, the words that we speak. Yeah. So it matters, where every thought that we think is creating form on some level. So if we notice the stories that we're telling ourselves, that we're playing on a loop over and over and over, we can ask ourselves, is that the truth? Yeah. And the belief systems are another.
BS.
BS. What is our belief system, you know, about ourselves, about life, about another person, whatever it is. And if we explore that belief system, maybe it could have been a survival mechanism at one point for us. You know, it could have worked for a period of time, but it's obsolete. And if we disengage that, it's like an app, and discard it, you know, it's like our human operating system. It's what you're saying. I may say it in a different way, but we're saying the same things. Our human operating system can operate more efficiently. And that's the...
Winston Churchill said we have the privilege of being separated by a common language.
Yes, exactly.
There's only one thing to talk about.
Yes.
Psychology talks about it in one set of terms. It's called the unconscious. And theology talks about another set of terms. It's called God. Another, physics talks about it as energy.
Yeah.
But when you look at it, it's all exactly the same thing.
It's all exactly
There's only
the
one
same
thing to talk about.
Yeah.
And to your point, John, that we've been given these false definitions of the word love. It's sexual athletics. It's putting your head on the chopping block so you can show that you'll sacrifice yourself for. That's love.
That's a great vision.
And that's got nothing whatsoever to do with love. Love is a created state of being. If you hold a newborn child and you tap into that newborn energy, that newborn isn't loving you. That newborn is love. And each of us is made of that stuff. And when we can bring that forward in the presence of breath, whatever opens in the unconscious is healed instantly.
Yeah.
It just, the whole thing literally collapses. some interesting Harvard research. They hook people up to electrodes, measure brain cell firings. And in a time frame where they could measure 10,000 brain cells firing, the max amount of data that went into conscious awareness was 9 bits. So 9 bits out of 10,000 brain cells firing. And it's been estimated in that same time frame that we live in perhaps a 20 trillion bit world. Now, if that's anywhere near accurate, here we are in a 20 trillion bit world, 10,000 brain cells firing, and we're living in 9 bits of data, and we think we know what's going on out there. And that 9 bits of data is our own individual personal reality, a la CIA's research, saying that the mind generates reality, it doesn't record it. And that's our individual reality. And then there's actuality. And when I let go of, another really nice reference that you made was the faucet. When I let go of the restricting valve, I mean, you think of a 20 trillion bit world, 10,000 brain cells firing 9 bits, that's all reducing valves. What if we opened up to the flow? And the breath is the key to it.
To right here.
It is.
So with the spirit of this, you know, you have these mental, emotional belief systems, and they translate into physical because we believe that we have
literal chemistry,
arthritis in our knee, or we believe that we have MS, right? And so many times people carry that diagnosis like a badge, like this, almost like it gets to the point where I see a lot of patients where it becomes their identity. And then if they were to like not have that, it's almost like I can't lose that. It's a part of them, right? And
who would I be?
They get so many different benefits in the sense of attention, love, connection. They're building these brain cells that get them kind of connected to these physical ailments. So I think that's one thing that we should dive into. The other thing that I'd love for us to kind of conversate a little bit about is this idea of people with multiple personalities, where one can have poor vision and the other one doesn't need glasses, or one has diabetes. And so this is just like the most amazing evidence that we are creating so much in our physical world. So with that said, Michael.
Well, the word diagnosis, let's break it down. Diet is 2, and agnostic is someone who doesn't know. Diagnostic, 2 who don't know. Go to a dozen diagnosticians and what will you probably get? At least 7 or 8 different diagnoses. And if somebody locks onto that diagnosis, it becomes literally a state of hypnosis. And hypnosis is nothing but the focus on one idea to the exclusion of everything else. And when we do that, because we are creators, as Max Planck said, it takes a mind, an intelligence to draw these atomic elements together to turn it into what's called matter. So what is the matter? The matter is the mind. I mean, it literally, until we get to that place of recognizing that what draws these elemental forces together into this thing we call the world is our minds. And cleaning that up is such a key.
I think that's so interesting for you to bring that up because Harry, well, you know Max Major. I'm remembering now that we've traveled together, the 3 of us, the 4 of us, and Max he does hypnotism. And he can have people forget their name and all kinds of, and so it is really, really amazing how you can install programs with people for their benefit, and you can install programs for people to their detriment.
Well, the ancients said transcend. They weren't saying float off in space somewhere. They were saying put an end to the state of trance. Get out of trance, wake up.
So what are some strategies that you feel people can utilize that might be watching this and they're at home? And Harry, I'll let you start. That can start to unpack some of the things that we're talking about and some things that they might be able to do at home to kind of reorganize this to start to heal various problems.
Well, I really am a strong believer in structure. Because when we wake up in the morning, where do we go when we sleep? So when we wake up in the morning, if we keep our eyes closed and we just really breathe into our body and really become aware, and for 5 minutes, just allow ourselves to wake up this way of just breathing in and filling up our entire body. Yes. And putting energy just in our body and feeling our body and being very present and noticing if the mind takes you away, just remember that you've forgotten and bring it right back. So it's breath work. It's doing it in the morning. The Course in Miracles says 5 minutes spent doing that in single-minded focus will assure you as you walk through your day, if you were to get triggered, if you were to get charged by something, you can pull it back. You can, rather than react, you can be proactive.
Choose to do an act. Yeah.
So it's breath work. It's really breath work. It's a powerful process, and it's 5 minutes. Everybody has 5 minutes.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And just being present with the day as they walk through as we all walk through their day, just being present to the breath and getting in that flow state, so that I call it our midline, going vertical. Yes, because there's only now. Yeah, there is nothing else.
It's like we aren't. You do joy, right? It's like you wake up in the morning, and to one sense, you can kind of sit there and say, okay, what's life going to do to me now? Like, is it going to be a good day? And you're just kind of like floating along versus, you're gonna start doing joy, right? Yeah. You're going to create joy through a ritual.
Well, once we realize that joy is always there, it's innate within us. We're never separate from us. Do we hook into it? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's a paleontologist, what was his name? Back in the 60s, I studied his work. And he said this: joy is the infallible sign of the, actually, I edited this in my head. Joy is the infallible sign of the presence of God. I edited it just slightly. Joy is the infallible sense of the awareness of the presence of this active love that we live, move, and have our being in. And that practice in the morning, one of the things that most people do in the morning is they've got their list and they got to go get it done. And the number one drug of this culture is busyness.
Yeah.
It's how people avoid feeling and dealing with get up and go. I don't want to feel, leave that back there.
Well, it's like the symbol of the cross, Michael. It's like we live very horizontal, in our horizontal linear minds of go, do, acquire, achieve, succeed. I call it the desire fulfillment syndrome, because we have this desire. And we think, okay, when we get out there and I acquire or achieve something, then I can be happy.
Identity.
And there's only now.
Yeah, you're never going to get there.
There's only now. So
and with healing, there's that I'm going to get healthy, and it's always like, versus be healthy in this moment.
Yeah.
Right. And I've heard you when we've worked with patients together, you've been like, is there anything wrong in this moment right now? And it gets that shift in awareness. Yes. And some people, they get so anxious because they're thinking about, the biggest concern I feel with all of my patients is it's never going to go away.
Right.
This is the unconscious
hopelessness
belief system that is triggering most of the anxiety is they have this physical
I'm going to be stuck with this forever.
And it's never going to go away.
Yeah.
And if that's their thought, that's what they'll produce.
Right.
Because they will organize matter in their 2 square feet to reflect that.
I don't want this to last for the rest of my life. And then the image is seeing it lasting for the rest of their life. And that's what gets inscripted into the unconscious, because the unconscious just sees it as an image and it's not reading it. Right.
Yeah. One of the questions that I ask people is, do you know how empowered you are? Yeah. And people they're not present to how empowered they are, of noticing. If we really go to, Michael, we go to that place where the mind is creating. It's like the story of Joe Dispenza, when he was riding his bike and he got hit by the Bronco, and they took him to the hospital, and he had 6 vertebrae that were crushed, and they told him, oh, you'll never walk again. And he said after 3 hours of meditation one day, because he was able to single-mindedly focus, so the mind creates. So he saw his 6 vertebrae being completely aligned and perfect. And today he
was grateful for it.
Yes.
Yeah. He felt deep sense of gratitude. And that's kind of the general gist that I've gotten from the 3 or 4 times I've gone to see Joe Dispenza. And people come from all over the world to go there in wheelchairs. And it's like the majority
and they
of
have
people
healings.
get there for some physical
because they change their perception.
And that's what he gets you, just going into gratitude and seeing the healing now in this moment.
Yes. So a powerful question, because the quality of our life really depends on the quality of the questions that we ask ourselves. So if we ask ourselves, what if I knew I'm already healed, dreaming that I'm not? It's a powerful question. It's a powerful question. You know, what if you knew you're already healed, just dreaming that you're not?
I love that.
And all of it comes down to, what are you doing with your mind? I just pulled up this quote from Max Planck. To me, the term matter implies a bundle of energy which is given form by an intelligent spirit. As a man who's devoted his whole life to the most clear-headed science, the study of matter, I can tell you this much. There is no such thing as matter. All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particles of an atom to vibration and holds this minute solar system of the atom together. We must assume behind this force the existence of a conscious, intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter. And, you know, one piece of the puzzle, the focus of my work is Aramaic, but the one piece of the puzzle that I have to tip the hat to the Greeks were, and they said, guard the portals of the mind. Be careful who you let in there and who you let source your mind energy, because that state of hypnosis is easy to fall into. And when we buy it, when we engage in that, then our intelligence is used to literally organize the matter to reflect what we hold.
Yeah.
And the genius 2,000 years ago of Yeshua to know how to collapse the constructs that come out of the energetic patterns of the past, how to collapse them and bring the root of them forward to love in the presence of love so that they dissolve, that they are removed. That's the core of forgiveness. A la first century Aramaic.
Well, love is real. Anything else we're experiencing outside of love, we're hallucinating.
Yeah.
So, yet the illusion can feel as powerful in its effect as is the truth that love is real. So we either get hooked into the story of the drama, or we hook into love.
Well, that's Einstein. Reality is nothing but an illusion, but a very convincing one.
Yes.
Whatever. If your illusions are on the hostility and fear side of the board, delete them. You know, like get rid of those illusions and go for the ones that are actually based in the real, true presence of being, the real, true presence of human life, of love.
You know, I'm remembering that we've had some pretty amazing conversations about Ho'oponopono. And there was some upgrades that we were looking at with that, and how I was in Maui recently, and I had a great conversation with a local healer there who was very into the Ho'oponopono. And Michael, if you would just kind of speak a little bit to some of the thoughts you had surrounding the phrases that they use and some of the upgrades that you saw there.
Yeah. Well, the statements that are used, you know, so much, and I don't think it applies to the original Ho'oponopono as it was in the Hawaiian language. But I think when it got translated over here, much as the Aramaic, it became Hellenized. The word for the Greeks took over. You know, if Yeshua sat in most circles today, that supposedly talk about his teachings, he'd say that's all Greek to me. And I suspect that the originators of the original Ho'oponopono would say the same thing. It's all Greek to me. So when you say I forgive you.
Yeah.
So if I think forgiveness is about how I let you off the hook for what's happening inside of me, I'm doing nothing to change what's happening inside of me. And forgiveness, the actual forgiveness, is about how I change what's happening inside of me. So there's the first one. Let's knock that one down.
Yeah.
So rather than I forgive you, it's like, so I have in me a pained construct. Gee, it looks like it matches one you've got. What I'd like to do is join you in us bringing this forward in the presence of love and getting rid of it. So I'm not going to forgive you. I will never forgive you and never forgive anybody. But I'll join you in empowering you as you join and support me, empower me to forgive from my tissue structure what never belonged there. Mm-hmm. So there's the first one. It's the removal process.
Well, it's a completely different shift when people use that word. There's a default to what that means, which is typically to let somebody off the hook.
Yes.
Where the Ho'oponopono, go through the phrases, because
I love you.
I love you.
I love you.
Big mistake.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Big mistake.
Please forgive me.
Please forgive
me. Big mistake.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm sorry would be like, you don't want to be sorry. Like, who wants to be sorry?
What I've noticed over the years is that people who say I'm sorry a lot are sorry people.
Yeah.
It's not about sorry. We developed a specific tool for that, and it's the apology tool. Right. Gee, I made a mistake. I apologized. I stepped on your toes, and instead of focusing on what I'm sorry about and the mistake, we both go about creating it again, I'm going to focus on, I'll take responsibility, and then I'm going to language what I'm going to do in the future. In the future, I'm going to really pay attention to your feet to make sure they're taken care of.
Well, we're basically not going to put color of shame associated with I'm sorry. It's going to be more of the, hey, I apologize. This was something that was done without intention.
Yeah,
maybe it was,
or even
done intentionally. Yeah. However, there's a willingness to change and to do better. Like the word sin is an archery term,
apology,
right? Yeah, means that you missed the mark. Try another shot, right? Yeah. So I'm sorry. Please forgive me. And in the spirit of forgive me, we want to be thinking in terms of, I have an emotion that's coming up based on an event that happened, and I'm looking at that other person, place, or thing as the source of the pain here, where I'm going to forgive, I'm going to let that off the hook, versus I'm going to go into myself and remove that corrupted data point that is creating that reaction.
Exactly.
And so that's something that is very difficult for people to just wrap into one word. So the spirit of it.
There's an interesting piece in that puzzle, or at least it was for me when I worked with the Aramaic. Everywhere where you hear Jesus supposedly saying, forgive your brother, I forgive you, there are two words that are always missing, and they're the words as to. So if you do something, John, that resonates, let's say rage in me, do I need to forgive you because I have rage? No, but I would be instructed by Yeshua to forgive as to what John brought up in me. Right. So now I'm applying forgiveness to my rage. Thanks, John, for showing me my rage. I mean, that behavior you did was horrific, and I'll pardon you. I'll let you off the hook for it. And now I realize I have forgiveness work to do. I have pain in me about that. And so now I'm going to work with removing that. So that would be the forgiveness aspect of it.
Well, Ho'oponopono is all about energy. And we know energy is everything. Everything is energy. It's meant to create reverence and gratitude. When we create reverence and we create gratitude, then there's a transference of energy that happens. And you got to be clean. Yeah. You have to be clean for that to happen.
Yeah. And then the next one would be I love you. And I know, Michael, that you always say, like, you can't do love, you are love, right? And so when you say I love you, you're not owning the fact that you are love. And so often when this is used in our society, we're kind of like, I love you, and right. So like, if you go tell somebody I love you and they don't respond, how do you feel? Does it bother you or does it not bother you? But typically it's kind of like you're fishing for like, we love each other.
We give to give.
There's a codependency associated with it. Am I right?
Yeah. Well, what most people call love in this culture is a very venial form of approval.
Right.
It really means I approve of you, but by God, if you violate one of the goals I have for you, the honeymoon is over. Love is going to turn to hate that fast.
Yeah.
Why? Because it was never love in the first place. We've got a false definition. There are two problems with that. One, we void the awareness of who we are as love when we do that. But two, we set a goal for the mind. And the mind is basically a goal-oriented machine. When we set the goal to love somebody, i.e., approve of them, and they are drawn to us, let's say by our own grief, then their behaviors are going to resonate our grief. So now I'm trying to love you. Well, you're resonating my grief. Mm-hmm. And now I failed at loving you. So now I'm on a whole other guilt trip on myself. Now it's, as opposed to, I recognize who I am as love. I recognize who you are as love. And I recognize who you are. And I commit to holding that space for us. Mm. But when you give the mind a goal it can't achieve, that's when people get into overwhelm, failure, guilt, fear. You know, what's wrong with me? I was supposed to love my neighbor. In the Aramaic language, Yeshua never said, love your neighbor. It does not exist. The word that was used there in Aramaic was the word rachma, which is a filter in the frontal lobes of the brain that allows only intentions, which are stored here, that are keyed to love to become available for use as raw material for goals. Mm-hmm. The other two qualities of intention are negative and destructive. When rachma is active, so he didn't say love your neighbor as yourself, so have rachma. And by having rachma, when you think of the Creator, when you think of neighbor, you maintain self. You maintain awareness of self as love. Mm-hmm. So it's a whole different game. Mm-hmm. And it avoids a whole series of pitfalls that come with the Greek.
What's really happening there when an individual is experiencing that joy, which, you know, bliss, joy, when they're with somebody and it's like, okay, I love you. And I've always thought in terms of, you're falling in love with yourself, right? You're loving yourself within that relationship, which is another layer. But I think that you can go even deeper than that. And I'd love to hear your perspective on it.
Yeah, I call that the file folder effect. You know, if we fire two files in the mind, information is organized, energy is organized in the mind in files, so to speak. And if we file two fires together, then they wire together. Two files, pardon me. They wire together. So I'm going to put forward a resonating frequency with my voice that taps into something I know you guys have got brain cells for, but have probably never wired together before. So I'm going to ask you not to think about a purple alligator. And what happens?
I thought about a red alligator.
Purple fires, alligator fires, and you do something with that, right? So it's the mind is just a resonating device. The mind is a resonating device.
Fired. Or hired, one or the other. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when they fire together, then anytime in the future, one or the other, like if we got together tomorrow afternoon, I said, don't think about a purple, what would come up in your mind? Red alligator, right? Whatever you wired in there is what's going to move. Mm-hmm. That's that default network. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And when we live in that, then, you know, I have somebody that I'm attracted to, we have this resonance, there's a lot of energy between us, and I have a clean, clear file in my mind on them. But one day they give me the look and resonate my rage. And if I say, you really enrage me, I just took rage into my brain's image of them. Mm-hmm. Forevermore in their presence, unless I forgive my rage, there's going to be a modicum of rage moving in me. Now, you know, I do that once, it's not a big deal. But then I hook sadness, and I hook fear, and then I and one day that file just becomes so loaded with all of the files I've wired in there that I walk into their presence and everything in me explodes and the honeymoon is over. And it's all because of the file folder effect. It's all because of the file folder effect.
That's why we have one of the highest divorce rates. You know, so in the spirit of that question that I just threw out there, I was thinking, okay, within this, I'm in a romantic relationship, and then I have the object of my love is in front of me. I love you.
Oh, there you go, big mistake.
And then here I am. Okay, well, no, I'm loving myself while I'm in relationship, but yet, what am I loving? My ego within this relationship, right? I'm loving this idea of myself within that relationship that feels good until it doesn't, right?
Vladimir Lenin, probably responsible for more deaths on Earth than any human in history, had a really genius insight. He said, if you can change the meaning of a culture's words, you can destroy that culture. When they changed the word love to sexual athletics, love disappeared. It describes a state of being. Nobody's ever loved you. Nobody's ever loved me. You've never loved anybody. He's never loved anybody. Nobody's ever going to love us. God doesn't love us because love isn't something we do. It's what we are. It's a state of being. But when we give the mind a false definition, we go, how did that song go? Looking for love in all the wrong faces. Looking for love in too many places. We're trying to get something that we are.
Well,
it's like what we're looking for is what is looking.
We experience it, no? Like there's an experience of love. Would you agree to that?
Actually, I think it's for most people, what they call, again, love is venial approval. It's I'm being approved of, therefore at the moment I'm safe. I'm not going to be attacked. And that relieves my anxiety, and so that feels good. But it hasn't got anything to do with experiencing directly who we are as human beings. And my offering is that our physiology is designed to be fueled by this active presence of love that we are. And if we remove it, then the thing starts to suffer. It's like there's a story I tell in the Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop about the rose and the butterfly. So the rose and the butterfly meet, we give them each an ego, they fall in love, they have this great time together, and one day the butterfly up and flies away. And the rose, knowing that the love of the butterfly is the most important thing in this life, uproots itself to give chase. What's going to happen to the rose? It's going to die. Why? It made something more important than being connected to its source. So when I bring a whole being called love to a relationship, and I have a relationship with someone who's a whole being as love, now the fireworks begin. That's when the real thing happens. And my take on relationships, I do a workshop on healing through relationships, is that the purpose of a relationship is to kick us right square in the limitations, show us what we're holding on to that we need to work through. And so when we're drawn to somebody, for most people, it's because of the matching bags of garbage and the opportunities to learn forgiveness that are going to come. So the relationship that can drive somebody into the deepest states of hell, at least in the way people think of it, the same relationship, if I turned around, I actually grow into an adult and take responsibility, is the very relationship that will take me to heaven.
Yeah.
Same thing. But what am I doing here? What am I doing with my mind energy that is organizing my chemistry?
I'm over here thinking about red dinosaurs and
or alligators
and frogs and things like that. I think this has been a really rich conversation. We've really covered a lot of beautiful, subjects. And
thank you for initiating this.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, Michael, if somebody wants to find you, how could they find you?
They can go to my website, whyagain.org. They can go to their app store in their phone. We have an app for this. They can go to their app store in their phone and type in Heartland, one word, Heartland, Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness. And that will bring an app up with a red glowing heart in it. And that contains all the technology of first century Aramaic forgiveness. It's free. Very private app. We specifically designed so it asks for no invasive permissions whatsoever. So they can download the app, and through the app, they can ask us questions directly. Any place in the app, they can push a button, ask a question, hit send. My wife will receive it, and she'll read it on our next radio show, 5 days a week, an hour a day from 1 till 2 o'clock Eastern time. We have a radio show, and people can call in and listen to the radio show. Most people, they have unlimited long distance, so they just call in. The number is 563-999-3581. Call and ask questions, or ask questions on the app. Jeannie will answer it, we'll read it on the radio show. We'll answer it and then send back a link to the show to let you know where to hear it.
Beautiful.
So, lots of ways to.
All you do is lick your finger and stick it up, activate your antenna with an intention.
Click your heels.
Harry's going to show up.
Okay, there's Harry. How can I help you?
It just happens in the universe.
Well, we have the love whistle, right? Remember those love whistles we were wearing?
The love tuner.
I was like, after I got the love tuner, I was like, I was like in an airport, and I'm like, where's Harry? I'm like,
you're going to whistle.
And I open my eyes like, oh, he's not here. I thought it was going to work.
Darn. It does a lot, though.
Yeah.
You can go to harrythehealer.net and find me. Yeah.
harrythehealer.net.
Not net.
Yeah.
That's it.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Awesome.
And where can we find you, Dr. Lieurance?
Yes.
I'm right here, right now.
But anybody out there that...
Yeah, drjohnlieurance.com. We have mitozen.club. This is going to be in the mitobrary at mitozen.club. So most likely anybody watching this is a club member and they're pretty familiar with me and how to find me. Yeah. So thanks for joining. This has been, you guys are just absolutely gems.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Such a blessing to humanity, both of you. So proud and pleased to be part of this amazing journey with you.
Thank you, John. Yes.
The original incredible joinee.
Yes.
Yeah.